when you were a gifted kid in school and now you have unmasked and you've learned so much more about yourself and your autism and your ADHD and the way that your brain works, the academic overachievement output severely decreases when you stop masking. It feels like loss. When I can't just sit down and bang out a bunch of writing in one go anymore, I'm like, I used to be able to do that. It doesn't mean that you're getting worse. It actually means that you're getting better because not all of your energy is going to acting like you have your shit together in a neurotypical way. Hey, sunshine. Welcome back to the Neurodivergent Creative. And today we're going to talk about how to outline a novel and also kind of the how and why of outlining a novel, as well as how good that you should expect and even attempt to make a first draft of that novel. So I primarily work with writers who are developing their first draft. I call myself a first draft coach. And it's different than being like a book coach for published authors or people who are in the trenches querying. The first draft, in my opinion, and in my experience, is so much different, especially for neurodivergent writers. And especially for first-time writers. By the time you've written several books or you are years into a writing practice, you have sort of worked through the comparison of your first draft to other people's finished drafts and things like that. And you know to expect it to be pretty rough in the beginning. But a lot of people, when they're starting out, when they have an idea for a book, they don't know how the first draft is supposed to go. Especially for people who were gifted and talented in school. So I don't know about you. I probably do know about you. I see you. I recognize you. Namaste. The overachiever in me recognizes the overachiever in you. When I was assigned rough drafts in school, I did not know what the point of that was because I knew the rubric. I knew what the teacher wanted. I knew how to write a paper. And so I would just write a paper. And I didn't need to do a first draft and then improve upon that. Sometimes I would even write the paper and then handwrite the quote rough draft to turn in for my rough draft because I didn't understand the point. So if that's you, hold on to your butts because this episode is for you. And I am going to be talking about novels, but this applies to any like long form writing. So maybe that's blog posts. Maybe it is like short stories that you're working on. It could be memoir. It doesn't have to be a novel, but that is primarily what I'm going to talk about just to keep myself on one topic. We're going to try. Like I can stay on one topic. That's funny. So let me take a sip of coffee and get started. Okay, here we go. So you can honestly outline a novel in like 1 to 2 hours. And people are going to be like, Caitlin, that's ridiculous. Don't tell people that. I don't care. You can write a bare minimum outline in 1 to 2 hours. I know because I've done it. And this starts to get us into the difference between plotting and pantsing. So if you are not already familiar with these terms, a plotter is someone who outlines their plot before they write the book. So they know what's coming. They know the twists and turns. They know the overarching themes. They know the character arcs. Like one of my clients has a dossier on each of his characters. He knows their individual character arc. He has a plan for how they fit into the overarching story. He's writing a series, so he knows how they are going to be in book 1 versus book 2 or book 3 or somewhere beyond if he goes beyond a trilogy. Like the guy has a plan. He is a plotter. And then you have pantsers. And I like to call pantsers archeologists because the pantser is someone who is going by the seat of their pants. That's where the term comes from, pantsing. But I call them archeologists because it's pretty typical with these types of writers that they sort of discover one piece of the story. So an idea comes to them in the shower, or they've had an idea for a book for like years and years, and they're finally like, I just need to write this. I'm not sure what comes next, but I know this part. And then they dig around and they find the other pieces, and eventually they get to put together a whole fucking dinosaur. And that's awesome. I had a client in the first cohort of working title who was writing her book this archaeology style. And so sometimes she would submit stuff and she's like, I don't know where this is going. And I'm like, you don't have to. This is still, even if it never ends up in the final draft of the book, this is still really important for you to have like dug up and found and tested it. So like you dig it up and you're like, okay, is this a bone that fits here? Is this a shard of pottery that fits into this other shard of pottery that I found? This is why I love pantsing and the archeologist approach to writing. However, I have found the secret third thing, which is doing a bare ass minimum outline. And the reason why I think doing a bare ass minimum outline is very helpful is that then you have a basic framework for your story and how the different elements are going to connect. So you know sort of your plot twists, your ups and downs, because you can't just write a story where the main character has success and zero challenges, right? That's going to be kind of boring to the reader. It's not going to draw people in. But you also can't have a story where your main character is just getting freaking nailed with terrible happenstances the entire time. We need kind of a balance. We need some up and down, some give and take. So allowing yourself to kind of outline, okay, I know where my story begins. I have an idea of where I want it to end. And honestly, even if you don't know where you want it to end, I still think you can like pencil it in and then change it on the way if you want. The key is not getting hung up on the details and allowing yourself to just write the first draft. Bare minimum. Okay, so gives you your basic framework, your plot twists, ups and downs, the like really emotional moments that you want to bring into the reader's experience. Doing an outline before you write also helps you with timelining. So I'm writing a time travel novel. My debut novel has 3 POV characters and one of them is flashback and involves time travel. So my timelines are all over the place and I'm on like my 3rd round now. So like my second revision. I did my first draft and then I started revising it and then I got stuck because I was like, I don't know when the timeline, oh my God. So I had to like stop and then start over with like my timeline actually laid out and planned. And I actually started doing one POV at a time. So I could get that entire like flashback character whose story arc is in the past. I could get all of her details down. And then when I'm writing in the like present of the story, I can make sure that the emotional beats, the sort of plot swells and decreases are sort of lining up with that backstory character. Because you don't want your one POV to be having like the worst day ever. And then you switch to another POV and this person's having like a great time. That's just emotional story whiplash. So if you're doing multiple POVs, multiple timelines, anything like that, having an outline just where you can jot down notes and be like, okay, and then this happens and then that's going to happen. Here's what year it is. Here's what month it is. If you're doing something that's set like during a semester at a school or a college, having an outline of the different months can be very helpful. Like, is it realistic for this plot to happen in this amount of time? And having an outline also helps you avoid plot holes and continuity problems, especially if you want to write a multiple book series. Because when you're pantsing, if you don't have a place where you are sort of keeping down like key elements and notes, you might drop things that get lost and not continued into later books. We want to avoid that so that there's better continuity. And then it also makes you like sort of give a little bit of forethought into your overall theme, arcs, where you want to take the story, and how that can be helpful for you. So my client, who was the archaeologist, the pantser, eventually started to get to a point where she was getting frustrated that she didn't know the ending of the book. And so this was a time that now an outline was going to be really helpful. So we coached on that. And I was like, okay, so here are some possible endings. And then when you're looking at possible endings, you can say, oh, I definitely don't want that one. I definitely don't want that one. Maybe this or that. And now you at least have a direction to go. You at least have like a few elements. And my approach to this secret third thing between plotting and pantsing is I call it novel parkour. I have a free 5-day challenge. It's amazing. You can sign up for it. I'm going to tell you about it at the end of this episode. But the novel parkour approach helps you outline your novel in a short span of time. And we are doing it in a short span of time because I know you have frickin' ADHD. And if you're like, well, I have to sit here and get it just right, and then maybe one day I can write this. No. We're not doing that. You jump in, it's parkour. If there's a plot hole, you better find somewhere to put your foot and jump over it. So we're just going to fill in the blanks, like rapid fire, fill in the blanks. And this is so helpful because it like embodies the idea of running up against that obstacle, and you don't have time to get in your head about it. You just have to find a way to keep your flow, find a way to keep your momentum. And this is the approach that I use with my clients to outline the first draft. Then in revision, that's when you go back through and make your story more emotional depth, more plot depth. Like we can add a lot more of the like intricacies and emotion and like sneaky little plot hints and things like that. But you don't need that in a first draft. The first draft is a rough sketch, very rough sketch. Pencil, very light pencil drawing of your plot. When you are trying to write like a gut-wrenching bestseller right out of the gate on your first draft, you are going to get fucking stuck. And I'm going to do more episodes on that coming up, so stick with me. But this approach, the novel parkour approach, helps you just jump over that. You can put a note in that draft. It's like, look up ways to explain skateboarding. That's what my client did. And it was very helpful because then you don't get bogged down and completely derail yourself. Because remember, we got to keep finding the dopamine. We have to keep finding the fun in writing. And it's not as fun if you have to stop what you're doing and go like look up the minimum wage in 1991. I did that. That was me. So this novel parkour approach is like, oh, hey, a thing I'm not quite sure how to write. You just jump right over that. Whee! Novel parkour. It's amazing. Which brings me to my next tip, which is how good is your first draft supposed to be? And my answer is going to personally offend you, so I want you to prepare yourself, okay? I coach my clients to make a first draft that is about 30% as good as they expect their final to be. 30%. 30% good. Your first draft only needs to be 30% good. Is it 30% good? Great. Keep going. Quit getting in your head about it. Stop derailing the process. 30% good. And here is the horrifying factoid that led me to this 30% thing. Because I don't know if there is science that says first drafts are only about 30% as good as the final draft. I don't know. I made that up because everything is made up. But here is a statistic about 30%, and it's about childhood trauma and secure attachment. So buckle up. As a parent, you only have to be about 30% present for your child's needs for that child to be securely attached. That is such a low bar. And when I learned it, it kind of destroyed me because if 30% is the mark, that means your kids are basically emotionally healthy and functional adults when they leave the home. If you only had to be there and get it right 30% of the time, and my parents failed to do that, holy shit. Okay, that's a bummer. So I reclaimed that little statistic and turned it into rough drafts. Because baby, if you can be there 30% for your rough draft, then that final is in the bag. Your success with this book, with this writing project, is inevitable if you can get 30% of your vision into the first draft. And that doesn't mean that that's a minimum, okay? You do not need to be going above and beyond. You don't need to be like, well, I'm going to do it 80%. I'm going to do it 95%. No, just freaking aim for 30, dude. And also pro tip, if you are a parent freaking out that you're not there 30% of the time for your child, moments when you mess up, and then apologize and take accountability and heal and repair the damage done in that moment where you messed up, that counts in your 30%. So every time you say that you're sorry to your child, you are creating a new generation of children who don't need therapy just to recover from their formative years. Well done, you. You're nailing it. So it is actually okay and even good for your rough draft to be pretty bad, honestly, like less than halfway good, because you only need 30%. You only need that sketch. You only need that barely there. The first draft is a Terry Pratchett quote, and I live by it, and I absolutely adore it. The first draft is just you telling yourself the story. It's just you telling yourself the story. It's just you and the energy of that story, the creative spirit of that idea, working together and writing down some notes and being like, and then that happens, and then that happens, and then that happens. Bare minimum. It's just showing up a little bit for your idea. And this is what I coach people on for a year at a time, because with my neurodivergent writers, there's going to be some times where you're like, oh my God, everything sucks. And you're going to go hide in bed and run away to the woods and you don't want to work on your book. Then eventually you come back and you're like, okay, Caitlin, I'm ready to do my 30% again. And then we get back to it. But I designed my coaching program for first draft writers to be a year long on purpose because of that. Because when you were a gifted kid in school and now you have unmasked and you've learned so much more about yourself and your autism and your ADHD and the way that your brain works, you are so much more aware of your traumas and your mental health, and you are taking care of all those things. And the academic overachievement output severely decreases when you stop masking. And it can almost feel like a loss. Not even almost, it feels like loss. When I can't just sit down and bang out a bunch of writing in one go anymore, I'm like, but I used to. I used to be able to do that. It doesn't mean that you're getting worse. It actually means that you're getting better, because not all of your energy is going to acting like you have your shit together in a neurotypical way. So the less you mask, the more you might actually have kind of a hard time reconnecting with a high creative output, hobby, or passion. That doesn't mean that anything is wrong. You should still write, you should still paint, you should still do these things that make you happy. But I'm going to ask you to seriously reduce your expectations when it comes to your mastery and the way that you used to be able to just perfect on the first try do things and be really good at them right away. I want us to re-normalize having to learn and having to go slow and needing to just jump over the gaps and fill them in later, like parkour. So this is why I recommend the bare minimum outline and not getting so precious about those finer details that are in your story and the finer details of what you want your book to look like on the shelf when it's published down the road. That's for later. Right now, 30%. Okay, I'm going to wrap it up here. I love you. I'm super excited for you to outline your novel with me. And stay tuned, because in like 4 seconds, I'm going to tell you all about that. Okay, bye. Oh, and before you go, we've got something that's going to take your storytelling game to the next level. My novel parkour challenge. It is free and you do not want to miss out. Picture this: 5 days of high-octane writing adventure where you'll sprint through the twists and turns of crafting your novel outline. We're talking about diving in headfirst into the world of storytelling where your creativity knows no bounds, and we're not getting hung up on perfectionism either. Novel parkour is ideal for ADHD and ADHD writers out there because we keep it fast-paced, surface-level outline so that you do not need to get bogged down in the nitty-gritty details before you are ready to actually start writing. This is all about unleashing your creativity without overwhelm, making it the perfect playground for boundless imagination. So head on over to the website askfishfisher.com, sign up for Novel Parkour, the 5-day challenge, and I will see you at the starting line. As always, I want to give a shout out to my amazing production team, the Pancake Copycats. They specialize in marketing support and podcast support for neurodivergent entrepreneurs, as well as songwriter Ashton Powers, who wrote and performed my opening jingle. See you next time.